Hashem your God shall you follow, and him shall you fear. His commandments shall you observe, and to his voice shall you listen. Him shall you serve, and to him shall you cleave. Verse 6. So what should we do with a false prophet once we find out that he's a faker? And that prophet and that dreamer of a dream shall be put to death, for he had spoken perversion against Hashem your God. Now, in verse 7, we learn about prohibition of enticing others to follow idols. If your brother or any relative or your friend will entice you secretly, saying, "Let us go and worship the gods of others." Verse 9, you shall not accede to him. Don't hearken to him. Don't listen. Rather, you shall surely kill him. If we find out that there is a missionary among the Jewish people, we have to kill him right away. Now, in verse 13, we learn about Ir Hanidachat, a wayward city, a city where majority of its residents became idol worshippers. If in one of your cities that Hashem your God gives you in which to dwell, you hear saying, "Lawless men have emerged from your midst, and they have caused the dwellers of the city to go astray, saying, 'Let us go and worship the gods of others.'" Verse 16, you shall surely smite the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, lay it waste and everything that is in it. Gather all its property to the midst of its open square, and you shall burn it in fire completely, the city and all its property, to Hashem your God. And it shall be an eternal heap, it shall not be rebuilt. This is only for the land of Israel, and only if majority of the residents became idol worshippers. After a thorough research, we kill all inhabitants, except of course those that didn't serve idols, and we burn all their houses and all their possessions. Now, chapter 14. The Torah tells us that we are a treasured people. You are children to Hashem your God. You are a holy people. Hashem has chosen you for himself to be a treasured people from among all the people on the face of the earth. And therefore, you have special rules. For example, you shall not cut yourselves, and you shall not make a bald spot between your eyes for that person. Every Jew who is alive is precious, and they cannot mutilate themselves, they cannot hurt themselves, even if they are grieving a dead relative. And because you're such a special people, you have to follow laws of kashrut. Verse 4, these are the animals that you may eat. For example, ox, sheep, goat, deer, and some others. Of course, we learned in Parashat Shmini that any animal, as it says here, again in verse 6, that has split hooves and chews its cud is kosher. And these are examples of it. Verse 7, but this shall you not eat: a camel and a hare and a hyrax. Whatever those mean, there is a machloket, there is an argument what a hare and a hyrax or arnevet and shafan mean. Because these three animals, a camel and arnevet and shafan, they bring up their cud, they do chew their cud, but their hoof is not split. And the fourth exception is the pig. It has a split hoof, but it does not chew its cud. Now, kashrut of fish, everything that is in the water, anything that has fins and scales, you may eat. Kashrut of birds, every clean bird may you eat. And this is what you shall not eat from among them. And the Torah gives us a list of 21 birds, and any bird that falls into these 21 families we're not allowed to eat. If we know for sure that this bird is not one of these 21 families, then we can eat. But traditionally, we do not eat any bird unless our parents and our grandparents ate it. We follow our tradition in every country. And again, the Torah tells us about forbidden insects. And finally, it says you may not cook a baby in its mother's milk, the prohibition of cooking milk and meat. In verse 22, we have the law of Maaser Sheni, the second tithe. You shall tithe the entire crop of your planting. Verse 23, and you shall eat it before Hashem your God, in a place that He will choose, in Yerushalayim. However, verse 24 tells us, if the road will be too long for you and you cannot carry it, you live far away from Yerushalayim, and Hashem blessed you with a lot of food. Verse 25, then you may exchange it for money and bring the money to Yerushalayim, and you may spend the money for whatever your soul desires. You shall eat it there before Hashem, your God, and rejoice. Now, verse 28, we learn about Maaser Ani, a different kind of separation of 10% to be given to poor people. At the end of 3 years, you shall take out every tithe of your crop in that year and set it down within your cities. Every third year and every sixth year of the Shemitah cycle, we give Maaser Ani, the tenth for the poor, instead of Maaser Sheni. Instead of taking it ourselves to Yerushalayim, we take that 10% and we give it to poor people. Then the Levite can come, and the convert, and the orphan, and the widow who are in your cities, and these are just examples of all poor people, so they may eat and be satisfied. So in order that Hashem your God will bless you in all your handiwork that you may undertake. Now, chapter 15. Laws of Shemitah. One of the laws of the seventh year is that any outstanding loans are forgiven. At the end of the 7 years, you shall institute a remission. Every creditor shall give up his authority over what he has lent his fellow. If the loan did not reach maturity yet, then it is not cancelled. But a loan that was supposed to be repaid already, and the borrower is poor, cannot pay, once the 7th year comes, he no longer needs to pay. Now, verse 7. Commandment to be warm and open-handed to extend free loans. You shall not harden your heart or close your hand against your destitute brother. Rather, you shall open your hand to him. You shall lend him whatever is lacking to him. Beware that you should not say, the 7th year approaches, the remission year. If I give him a loan, it will be cancelled. I don't want to lose my money, so I'm not going to lend. You shall surely give him, and let your heart not feel bad when you give him. For in return for this matter, Hashem, your God, will bless you in all your deeds and in your every undertaking. Giving out free loans is a great mitzvah and provides us with great blessings from Hashem. When we rely on Hashem and say we will freely give out our money, even though we might not get paid. Now, in verse 12, we have laws of Jewish slaves. A Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, if they will be sold to you, they shall serve you for 6 years, and in the 7th year you shall send them away for free. But when you send them away, you shall not send them away empty-handed. Rather, you should adorn him generously. You have to give them gifts of food, animals, and every slave must receive 30 silver coins, 30 shekels, to start his life again. Now, verse 16. In the event he will say to you, I will not leave you, he chooses to remain your slave, then you shall take the awl, the instrument to make holes, and put it through his ear and the door, and he shall be for you an eternal slave up to 50 years, until the year of Yovel. We pierce his ear as a sign that he chose to be a slave, and until Yovel he can remain with you. But then, when the Jubilee year comes, every Jewish slave must go back and start his life as a free man again. Now, verse 19, we learn about Bechor of animals, the firstborn of animals. Every firstborn male that is born in your cattle and in your flock, you shall sanctify to Hashem. Before Hashem your God shall you eat it. Which means you you give it to Kohen, and the Kohen takes the Bechor and brings it to Yerushalayim, offers it in the temple, and then eats it. However, verse 21, if it has a blemish, then you're allowed to eat it in your cities. You don't have to bring it to Yerushalayim. The Kohen can eat it outside of Yerushalayim, because now that it has a blemish, it's no longer fit to be a korban. Now, chapter 16, the 3 pilgrimage festivals, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. You shall observe the month of the springtime and perform the Pesach offering. From here we learn that we must establish a calendar system that keeps the holidays in their proper time of the year. And therefore we have to combine the lunar calendar together with the solar calendar. The only such calendar in existence, the Christian calendar that we use now, is purely solar calendar, and therefore it lost its contact with the lunar cycle. The Muslim calendar is the lunar calendar. It follows the cycle of the moon, but it lost touch with the solar calendar, with the solar cycle, and therefore their calendars move around, their holidays move around. The Jewish calendar is the only one that is precise for the solar cycle and precise in the lunar cycle. Now, verse 3, some laws of Passover. You shall not eat leavened bread. For 7 days shall you eat matzot, bread of affliction. Verse 4, no leaven of yours shall be seen throughout your boundary for 7 days. Not only we may not eat chametz, we cannot possess chametz. Verse 7, you shall roast the Pesach offering and eat it in the place that Hashem your God will choose. Now, verse 9, the laws of Sefirat HaOmer. You shall count 7 weeks for yourselves, from when the sickle is first put to the standing crop shall you begin counting 7 weeks. Which means when we first start harvesting barley, the second day of Pesach, we bring the offering of barley in the Beit HaMikdash, and then we start counting 7 weeks. Now, the holiday of Shavuot. Then you shall observe the festival of Shavuot for Hashem your God. And now in verse 13, Sukkot. You shall make the festival of Sukkot for a 7-day period. You shall rejoice on your festival. You, your family, your workers, and the poor people with you. A 7-day period shall you celebrate to Hashem your God in a place that Hashem your God will choose. For Hashem will have blessed you in all your crop and in all your handiwork, and you will be completely joyous. Which means if we follow the Jewish calendar and we observe all the holy days, Shabbat and Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, together with Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, then we can be guaranteed that we will receive blessing for the next year. Verse 16 summarizes the 3 holidays and tells us about the mitzvah of going to Yerushalayim 3 times a year. 3 times a year, all your males should appear before Hashem your God in the place that He will choose, in Yerushalayim, on the festival of Matzot, the festival of Shavuot, and the festival of Sukkot. And a person shall not appear before Hashem empty-handed. Everyone according to what he can give. This is a mitzvah to bring a korban, olat re'iyah it's called, every time you visit Beit HaMikdash, according to the blessing that Hashem your God gives you. If Hashem gives you a lot of blessing, give a greater portion back to Hashem in the form of offerings. And if your portion is small, then you're not obligated as much. This concludes Parashat Re'eh. Thank you for joining us. Shabbat Shalom u'Mevorach.